Get out my shot.
Okay, you were in my shot. I didn't even ask you to. Oh, some chips. What?
As I was saying, let's all pay homage to the food we're about to receive today. What food hits home to you on any day? If you're Filipino, you're probably thinking of something along the lines of tinola, adobo, sinigang. These were the foods that I personally grew up on. Especially sinigang, because it's so simple to make. I hardly ever appreciated it as a kid because my dad always made it for dinner. See, he would be the one to come home from work before my mom does, so he was typically the one to be in charge of putting food on the table. Sinigang was the easiest thing to make. It didn't require any special cooking skills, and it was the most filling dish considering that he cooked for 5 people at a time every night. Not to mention that an entire pot of sinigang would only cost him about $14 worth of ingredients to make. But to my point, sinigang definitely hits home to me. It's also an excellent representation of why I made this YouTube channel in the first place. In the last video, I talked about an historical food culture struggle story. Well, today, here's my foodie in the struggle story. You see, I went to one of the most uniform schools out there in the Bay Area, and I've seen all kinds of privileges and entitlements from the people I went to school with, simply by remembering what foods were available to them. Most kids were able to get food from the cafeteria, and I've even seen some kids get In-N-Out and Taco Bell delivered to them by their own parents. What did I have for lunch, you ask? Well, it was whatever was left over from dinner last night. Can you guess what it was? That's right, you guessed it. I brought to school very often in a Tupperware container just like this. Rice and sinigang. Yep, I was one of those kids that hung out with the secluded Asians that sat in the corner and they always brought their own food from home. Those kids brought their own food like their mom's kimchi, broccoli and beef packed in a thermos. But besides the point, choices of food for me was not as broad as compared to the other kids that I went to school with. I knew a dude from middle school that was given a checkbook by his parents so that he could have pizza delivered to him whenever he wanted. You know how crazy that is? His parents entrusted him with limitless amounts of money to satisfy his hunger. Like at that point, if I was that guy, I'd be balling out on food left and right. Yeah, can I get 6,000 chicken fajitas, please? And then there's me and my sister over here, and we'd come home from school waiting for our dad to come home from work so that he could whip us up some dinner. And then he shout us out by name to let us know it's time to eat. Hey son! Hey! Let's eat now! Just like the Asian parent he is. Then I go to the kitchen and I see this big ass $14 pot of sinigang, and then I'll think to myself, sinigang for lunch tomorrow. Again. But it wasn't always like that. Eventually my mom gave me an allowance so that way I could buy food just like the other kids. But after spending so much money at the cafeteria, I realized that I wasted so much money and I could have just saved that allowance and then just packed my own lunch. So through it all, it actually provided me a humbling experience. So to my dad, if you're watching this, thank you for making a sinigang. Also, I'm willing to bet $20 that says that he cooked sinigang at least twice this week. So what is sinigang? It's a very popular, if not the most popular dish in the Philippines that's typically made with tamarind and some type of meat, whether it be beef, pork, or fish. Some of you guys might ask me, what does it taste like? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's imagine this. The moment you take that first sip of the soup, it's gonna taste extremely sour. Like so sour like a warhead candy. Do you guys remember those? It'll taste so sour that it'll make your eyes squint like really hard. Like so hard your face will look like you're being racist to an Asian person. It's that intensity of sourness built into a stew. Now let's talk about why it's widely known. So it starts with tamarind, but there's no official documentation of how it got to the Philippines. But it did originate from tropical Africa. Sources say that it was traded to India and then eventually it dispersed out into the Southeast Asian countries. On principle in Asian cuisine, the foods that you're provided with should never ever go to waste. And just like any Southeast Asian dish...
What?
As I was saying, sinigang was most likely discovered by mixing a culmination of ingredients that were put together in order to prevent food waste. By doing this, it allows rationing to prolong the food from spoiling. The model Asian dish that most resembles this methodology is fried rice. What I mean by that is take Chinese fried rice for instance. It was literally invented by mixing together leftovers in order to prevent the food from going to waste. Just like sinigang for example, some of the ingredients that were available to the Filipino people were fish, taro, tamarind, and tomato. And the way to preserve the food would be to cook it before it loses its freshness. So by combining all those key ingredients, that's how we ended up with the stew. And remember how I said that there's no confirmation on the origins of tamarind? We can't even say that sinigang originated from the Philippines in the first place. That's why there is so many different variations named differently in the other Southeast Asian countries. Like in Indonesia, they call theirs sayur asam. In Thailand, they call it tom yam. In Vietnam, they call it kanchua. And in Malaysia, they call theirs asam pedasi ikan. sinigang. There are so many countries that adopted this sour palette soup that it's hard to tell which country was first to make the discovery. But despite its origins, sinigang has always been tampered with and has changed rapidly throughout the years, as it had been widely distributed and known to be a staple in Filipino food culture. Because of its distinct sour taste, it's no wonder why it's considered to be the most popular dish in the Philippines. In my opinion, Filipino food culture is the next big thing for Americans to make a food fad out of. I feel like it's only a matter of time before some dude tries sinigang for the first time and he says, "Bro, this would taste great as a burger." So now I'm going to show you guys how to make it.
Alright guys, we're here at Lion Market, Philippine food aisle. I don't even know which cut of beef I want to get. Hey yo, can we just take this time to appreciate how well organized this Lion Market is? Like, look at this, man. Look at this. Look at this. Now this is what I really came here for, guys. I mean, look at all this taro. My wife can eat like 12 of these in like one sitting. A little bit of bok choy. Long bean is a must. And Thai chili. I always love going through this aisle, guys. Brings the anime right out of me. Let's grab and let's go home.
I brought along some help in the form of my wife's grandma, so let's see how she makes it.
Alright, we're gonna turn our heat on high and we're gonna boil our meat in a big pot of water. While we wait for that to boil, let's go ahead and start preparing our vegetables. So eventually your meat's gonna start boiling, and you wanna let it boil for about 30 minutes so that way it could cook all the blood and it'll surface to the top. After 30 minutes, take it off the heat and start washing away all the scum and the impurities. Once all the meat is cleaned up, let's go ahead and start our fire again, and then we'll go with a large pot of water and start filling that with our taro, tomatoes, and our meat. Ooh yeah, looks good so far. Now boil this for hella hours.
1 hour later. 2 hours later. 3 hours later.
Alright, it's been 3 hours and now we can add our tamarind mix. Now once you add the tamarind mix, you can eat this just as is like that. You don't have to add anything else. But if you want to add some more vegetables, make it a little healthier, then that's totally on you. For me at this point, we're going to add the okra, long bean, and eggplant. And the last thing to put in is going to be the bok choy. You want to add the bok choy last because that's the fastest to get cooked. And that's it, guys. That's how you make sinigang. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you.